is the Nurses Doing GAMSAT podcast, brought to you by Thankflip GAMSAT. We're here to teach you how to smash the GAMSAT, get into medicine, and become a flippin' great doctor.
Welcome back, everyone, to episode 4 of the Nurses Doing GAMSAT podcast. This is also the 4th part of the January Jumpstart, which is a challenge we're running at the moment to help those who are listening get their preparation up and running for the March and the September 2025 GAMSATs. It's a 4-part series. This is the 4th one where we kind of bring things together. Now, with that in mind, let's quickly recap the last 3 lessons, and then we'll talk about what we're going to cover today. But before we do that, welcome, Mare, to the session.
Thank you. It's been a great morning. I've already been to Pilates. I got smashed on the reformer. I know I think you were deadlifting this morning.
Yeah, I went to the gym.
Right?
I did some deadlifts. Actually, I just remembered now they were meant to be sumo deadlifts, but I did conventional. I completely.
Oh man!
For people who don't
you
know,
gotta follow a plan.
For people who don't know, they don't really know what that means. But those who do, they know that they're completely different things. But I just right now, as I was talking to you, I just realized I did the wrong one. So I didn't follow the plan, which is something we're going to talk about today.
You don't follow the plan, you don't get the results.
That's it. I get
simple.
And later in the week, I'm meant to do conventional, but I'll do the sumo ones instead.
Look, this is why I go to a class, because I know I go, I turn up, I listen, I do the things, I get smashed, and then I'm done. Like, I'm not one of these DIYers who wants to like pull things together. Neither are you.
No, my plan's not DIY. Like, I've got a trainer who is giving my plan, but I don't like the class kind of environment. I want to do it on my own, and I want to take from the recordings, but then kind of get it done. So we're kind of two versions of two different approaches.
Thing.
But yeah, I had a great morning. Dropped Ruby off, which is our daughter, for those who don't know, off at vacation care. They're going to be doing go-karting there today. The go-karts, they're not motorized. I thought they were little motorized ones. But no, which is, I mean, when I saw them, I was kind of reassured. They're these pedal, you got to pedal them.
Oh, okay, that's fun. Look, when I was a kid and I was going to vacation care, it was literally like a trampoline in an old YMCA center and like Vegemite sandwiches. It was crap. This vacation care stuff that they do now is lit. Yeah. It's amazing.
It is amazing. The stuff she's doing, like, yeah, same. Like, when we were kids, we didn't do that. We just ran around the neighborhood with the kids skateboarding and getting into trouble. So, she's not doing any of that. She's
it's a different time.
Completely different time. Yeah. But cool. So let's get into today's session. So just to recap the last 3 episodes. So the first part of the January Jumpstart, we talked about time management, and more specifically, how to create more time in your schedule for GAMSAT study, because a lot of people listening here are working full time. You might be a nurse, a physio, an OT, a social worker, any kind of healthcare professional. You're working full time. You got to look after yourself as well outside of that. So how do you squeeze in GAMSAT study? Well, you don't really squeeze it in. You do what we did in episode 1. So if you haven't seen it, go back, but it'll show you how to create at least 8 hours of extra time in your week. And we show you samples of people who've done it before, how to do it. So head on over there.
The second episode, I was going to dive into that topic.
Go for it.
Second episode was really around mindset, because a lot of challenges that I've seen, having spoken to thousands of students, is really about how do I overcome that self-doubt? How do I stop the worry? How do I start to step into, I can do this, rather than, am I smart enough? And, there's lots of techniques and strategies around self-sabotage and fear of failure and really overcoming that self-doubt.
And then in episode 3, we talked about the science section. We started to get into the nitty-gritty of GAMSAT preparation, how to do it. We talked about what the science section is really about. We gave you some sample questions of how to pull apart science questions without science knowledge, which is a mind-blowing, amazing moment for a lot of people. And now we're onto the 4th one, where the question becomes, how do you actually get started with your preparation? What do you study? What are the options? What do you read? How do you do it? And how do you make sure you get it all done? And so essentially, how do you start strong so that whether it's your first time or you've done it before, you can also finish strong too, and this can be your last GAMSAT. And so we're going to cover the key elements of successful GAMSAT preparation, particularly talking about two of the main pathways that are available to you.
Oh, Tom, before we dive into the pathways, I have to say that we need to start by thinking that the GAMSAT is a marathon. It's not a sprint. And we need to understand that mindset from the beginning because, you know, doing the GAMSAT is not actually about the GAMSAT. Doing the GAMSAT is about becoming the person who's going to be a medical student and who's going to be a doctor.
Yeah.
And so most people go into the GAMSAT thinking like, I just got to get through the exam and I'll be fine. And the reality is it's who you become on the way to medicine that determines the type of doctor you're going to become. And so I want everybody listening to start to think of this. This is a marathon you're undergoing. It's not a sprint. It's not how do I get how do I just get through the GAMSAT? This is a bigger way of thinking. And when you start to step into that mindset of what sort of medicine student am I going to be? What sort of doctor am I going to be? It can start to dictate how you best prepare for the GAMSAT exam.
Yeah, because it's the physics and the chemistry and the biology and the poetry and all that stuff. It's not really that hard, but it's boring for a lot of people. I'll just put it out there, right? And oftentimes that boring is more of a matter of perspective and how you think about stuff and how you approach it. Because when you think about that, hey, I need to learn these physics concepts or this way of this new way of reasoning, because it's going to help me to save lives and to become the person I want to be. It kind of changes your approach to what you're doing rather than, oh my God, I got to learn this chemistry stuff, right? And so that's part of it as well. And thinking of that longer term where it's not about cramming either, right? You can't cram for the GAMSAT. It's a skills-based exam. You can't cram skills, right? So it's a matter of making sure you have enough time, but also not stressing about, that kind of leads to the question of, do I have enough time? And we get people asking us this, whether it's 3 weeks before the GAMSAT, whether it's 3 months before the GAMSAT, whether it's, a year or two before the GAMSAT. Like, do I have enough time? And it's not so much, yes, you need a certain amount of time, but it's more what you do with that time that's important. Okay, because we've had people who come to us 3 or 4 weeks before the GAMSAT, and we help them get in because we help them work on the right things. Now, I don't recommend you wait until then to talk to us about it, but I'm saying that it's, what you do with the time is just as, if not more important than how much time you commit. Now, if you're listening to this in January, then that's a perfect amount of time to prepare for March. And if you're listening to this later or in February, then, hey, look, you're going to be sitting that exam in March anyway, right? And you're going to be studying for it anyway. So would you want to keep doing the old ways that you've been doing that haven't been working? Or do you want to make a change and start being far more effective and actually make improvements in the time that you have left? Right.
Oh, it goes to the 2020 word of the year, pivot.
Pivot, yes.
You know how everyone started using that word?
Yeah.
Like, at some point, you got to pivot if it's not working and use that time effectively.
That's it. And so this kind of leads into what we're talking about tonight or today, where we're going to talk about the approaches that are available to you. So here are the key steps that you need to apply and go through in your GAMSAT preparation. So if you're not making notes, I recommend you make notes on this. These are great topics. And so let's go through these. Mare, do you want to start with the key steps?
I mean, really the first step, and like the first thing you're going to do when you start is you're going to research and understand the exam. So before you do anything, you need to understand, what is the exam really about? Like, what are you up against? What's the GAMSAT testing? you obviously want to know the sections, the format, the timing, but you also want to understand why. Like, let me give you an example. I have students that come to me, and look, I get every type of student that you can ever imagine. Some people love science, some people hate science, some people love essays, some people hate essays. And particularly for people who dislike the essay writing section, when they start to understand what the essay section is really about, then it starts to make a change within them that's like, okay, I might be able to tackle this. Because, Tom, as a doctor, tell me, when you were working in ED, did they ever like have a code blue? And most people would know what that is, but if you don't know what it is, basically somebody's needs life-saving help, so they call the code blue, and doctors never run, but everyone briskly walks in the right direction, right? To
Rush in there, yeah.
Yes, and when they're resuscitating, there's always like someone kind of directing traffic, right? Like, hey, you give adrenaline and you start chest compressions and you start whatever. Has anyone in a code blue situation to you, Tom, as you've walked in, said, Tom, you sit in the corner and write an essay about it?
No.
Sounds a bit ridiculous,
no,
right? It ain't gonna happen.
Keep a straight face when you said that. No. Someone is dying. It's all about action. Yeah.
Exactly. But why do they have the essay section then within the GAMSAT? Let me tell you. Because the skills that you need are also needed in that situation. So the first skill to think about is like, how do you think outside the square box within this situation? So there are studies that have been shown that it is better for patient outcomes if not every single doctor is thinking exactly the same thing at exactly the same time. You need different perspectives. You need different points of view to increase those patient outcomes. So different like thinking is the first thing. The second thing is, if you're thinking different, you got to be able to talk about it. You got to be able to express it and back up why you're thinking differently in this situation, particularly if there's a different action that needs to be taken that's being currently taken. And so articulating what you've got to say, backing it up with why, and then also being able to do that in a short, sharp, sweet, very high pressure environment is how you have to do that. Now, if I say to you, Tom, section 2 is about writing 2 essays in an hour, that's about understanding the like fundamentals of the exam, right? Then cool, you know how section 2 works. But it's another level when you start to understand, okay, I've got to be able to think outside the square box. I've got to be able to articulate myself. I've got to be able to back that up with examples. I've got to be able to do that in a high pressure environment where I'm not very comfortable. Also, what the environment is like when you're doing chest compressions or any sort of code blue kind of stuff. So when I say researching and understanding the exam, I don't just mean reading the ASA info booklet or student booklet so that you understand what section 3 is, what section 2 is. It's having a really core in-depth understanding around the skills, because that's what's going to give you the competitive advantage.
Yeah.
I feel like, rant over a little bit.
No, that's 100% true. And that applies for every section, not just the essay section. Section 1.
For sure. Like, why the hell do they have symbolic poetry? Like, again, are they ever getting you in a hospital setting to go, hey, Tom, quick, stat, can you please interpret this symbolic poem?
Yeah, or the editorial cartoons, or, yeah. No, 100%. And that leads to the second key step, which is your study plan. And this is about putting together the important components so that you can get the key tasks done and develop the skills and the knowledge as well. And it's all about making sure that you know what to study, how, when, so that you don't miss any gaps. So that you have it laid out in front of you, you know what to do every single week, and you don't miss anything. And it also fits into your life as well. And this is the challenging part for a lot of our students and our listeners is, you've got a busy life. So how do you manage all of that and get the key components done? So your study plan is an essential key step here as well.
Oh, love me a study plan. The way I think about it is like if you're in Thailand and let's just say you're at the Hilton Hotel and you want to get to the Bangkok markets, you don't just wander the streets and hope that you make it to the markets. Like you get out on Google Maps, you punch it in, you find out where the dodgy areas are so you can avoid them, and you have the most straightforward route. And so that's what a good study plan is. Often that's going to need resources, but like really understanding what that route is important. But within that study kind of plan, the most important part is how you're going to build the skills before you start smashing practice questions. Because so many people come to me and they're like, I'm just doing practice questions and I'm not getting things right. And I'm like, well, of course not, because you're not practice questions don't build skills, they simply test them. So we've really got to make sure in that plan, like the study plan that you're making, you have replicatable skills that you are learning and techniques on how to do it.
Yeah. Every section,
and then,
all the micro skills in every section.
Absolutely. If this is new to you and you haven't heard me talk about this before, please go back to the previous episode 3 in this podcast, because I talk about skill acquisition techniques and how that works and why, not just why it's important, but how to do it. So if this is you, go back to that, or after this episode is fine too. But I just want to make sure, you have to, practice questions can't be all of your study. You need to build the skills first.
And then we go to actual practice questions, because they do make up a component of your study, but generally it's 20% of it, right? 80% is developing the skills and the knowledge, and then 20% is testing and getting feedback. All right. And so this is a very purposeful process of doing questions to identify the progress you've made, but then also looking for the problems. And this is where people get a little uncomfortable, because oh my God, I got these questions wrong. Excellent. I tell our students, that's gold. Let's see what you got wrong and why you got it wrong, right? Because that's the feedback. That's where your marks are hiding, right? And that leads to the next key step, which is then to fix those weaknesses. Too many people go, oh yeah, I got those questions wrong. Let's move on to the next ones. Or I read the explanations and they made sense. That means I know it. No, the explanations made sense because we articulated them very well. Right. That's why they make sense. It's not because they understand it. So then we need to hone in on those weaknesses. We need to go back to the skill building to fix those weaknesses. And again, this is for each section. Right. And then we move on to the next key step, which is the test strategies. Right. Making sure that in that GAMSAT environment, under time pressure, in the right on the screen, you're practicing the different approaches, strategies. What questions are you going to answer first, second, third? Because you don't just go from the start to the end. That'll be too simple for the GAMSAT, right? You need to go move around. How are you going to use the paper that you're given, or are you going to use the whiteboard that they give you, so you need to bring it. So that test-taking strategy and the timing as well, making sure that that's all finessed and refined.
Tom, tell me how many people miss that test strategy step, because honestly, people are generally so busy trying to smash out practice questions that they forget that how they're studying is not necessarily the environment that the test is going to be in. I ran an acceleration class for the bootcamp members on Monday, and we were talking about environments of study, and one of the bootcamp members was like, it has to be quiet. If there's no quiet, I cannot focus. And then literally the person on the screen next to her was like, I can't focus in quiet. I need to have noise. And I was like, neither of you are studying in a way that the exam is actually going to be, because it's not going to be full of noise, but it's also not going to be deadly quiet. And so we have to have strategies where we're matching where our skills are and our natural kind of ways that we work, and pulling them slowly towards exam conditions.
Yeah, because it can be distracting to have all these people in the
For you, I mean, one of our students was like, I love that.
Yeah.
Right?
And with that in mind, the next key step is the mindset and motivation. So stuff like this, like making sure that you're addressing all the kind of worries and fears and doubts and procrastination, all that stuff, and working through it, and developing the skill and the strength and the habit to be able to get the study done, no matter what comes up. Right, because
I mean, there's three core things that I like to think about with mindset and motivation. One is negative self-talk. We've got to tackle that.
yeah.
You are with you 24 hours a day. And so you are the one that's going to influence your mind more than anything
And so
else.
what is negative self-talk for those who don't know?
Well, it's kind of the words that you use to yourself all day long, the thoughts that you're thinking, both around your abilities, your inabilities about the exam, your beliefs around the exam. This is hard. I can't do it. I'm not smart enough. All these things that people, and you don't have to be saying it out loud. It's negative self-talk. So it's what's going on in your head about you.
Yeah.
It includes the words, it includes the thoughts, it includes the feelings. So negative self-talk is the first one. The second one's self-sabotage, which is like, I know I should be studying, but I'm going to go and do the washing instead.
Or I'm going really well with this, so it's time to stop for a little while and go be distracted with something else.
Oh, and that like upper limits where, you do amazing study one week, you like hit all your goals, and then the next week you're like kaputs. Like you just like stop dead in your tracks. You can't move any foot, like classic self-sabotage. The last one, which is probably the biggest of three, is fear of failure. And the biggest manifestation of this is when people are like, they don't fully dedicate themselves to their study. They don't do everything that's physically possible. And it's not that they don't want to, it's like something inside stops them. And usually what that is they're giving themselves an out.
Yeah.
So it's like, if I don't apply myself 100% and I go shit, well, I know it's just because I didn't apply myself 100%. It's not that I'm not smart enough. And it's not that I'm self-sabotaging. It's that I know I just didn't do enough. And so this fear of failure, it comes up in so many ways. The procrastination, the excuses we give ourselves, the not keeping promises to ourselves, there's so many things in this. But I'm giving you my top three. There are so many more.
Yeah, there's heaps. And then the final key step is accountability. It can be easy to fall off the right track and get distracted or by life, by other kind of science topics, or go down the wrong path. And so making sure that you have a way or someone or some way to stay on the right path and to get you right back on track if you fall off it. And that might be, with a coach or with a group or study partner. Accountability keeps you moving in the right direction, despite the problems that you're going to have, right? No one gets a smooth run up to the GAMSAT. There's always things that come up. What are you going to do? How are you going to get the study done anyway? Right. Mm-hmm. And so those are the key steps that you need to incorporate, or the key aspects you need to incorporate into your GAMSAT preparation. And so now let's talk about the two pathways that you can take. Right. The first is the DIY, the do-it-yourself pathway. And so just a story about my personal experience of DIY. Now, we were renovating our old apartment in Redfern, Sydney. Now, I am not a handyman by any way.
What do you mean? I mean, you're good at lots of things, but like handyman is probably not one of them.
With sutures, but when it comes to renovating, plumbing, that's not my skill. But I thought, you know what? That vanity, I watched a YouTube video and I know how to replace that vanity now. And so we had a kitchen vanity that needed to be replaced. And I was like, I don't want to pay for the plumber to do it. I can do this myself. I can do it cheaply. And so I start hacking away at this vanity. And I get it out, and I made a mess along the way. There's water everywhere, and I had to go into Bunnings and get the little cap because I didn't think, no, you need to get the little cap on the piping. And then I get to the point where I bought the new vanity, and I'm like, it's a floating vanity, so it's up in the air. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing here. This needs to be cut. I don't have the tools for this. I don't have the experience. And most importantly, I sure as hell don't have the time for this. I'm going to be on a plane And so I got to get this because I have to fly back to the Sunshine Coast. And so I'm like, I'm stressing out. I can't do this. There's water, there's muck everywhere. And I'm wasting time, and I'm wearing myself out at the same time as well. And so I finally just go, you know what, screw this, and I called the handyman and I said, hey, can you get? I've cleared out the vanity, but I need you to put it in. I need you to do the plumbing and hook it all up. And he got the plumber. I think they got the plumber on board, and they got it done in 20 minutes. Right. Meanwhile, I spent like 2 days, or a day and a half, messing around with this thing. They got it done in 20 minutes, and so.
Seriously, it would have been easier just from the beginning, just to like not do the DIY.
Yeah, that's it. And look, it works. Now, what's the GAMSAT story in this? Like the GAMSAT lesson in this, Marie?
I mean, I feel like it's very similar to what some people do in the GAMSAT, which is like, I'm going to DIY. I'm going to, you might get a book or you watch some YouTube stuff and kind of dive in. That's kind of what the DIY is. And look, for some people, that's actually a valid choice. I don't think your story was like maybe meant to sound as bad as it actually is, because it's kind of funny when you're not the one doing the DIY, when you're like sitting on the sidelines watching like I was. I've never heard you swear so much in Polish than you like trying to do that kind of work.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting because like even the way that you were looking at doing that DIY, it's like, oh, I can do this. This isn't so hard. But then when you get to the intricacies, there's some skill involved that maybe you didn't realize that you needed. And like some people can do it. Like that's not to say no one can ever do it. It's definitely
there is a hidden tax in it, right? There is a hidden price that you end up paying. Now, and that, you know, for example, in the GAMSAT, that could be around accountability. Around, you know, you might feel that you decide, you know, you might need some accountability and some help. So you get your feelers out there and you get a few people together, maybe some randoms you met online or maybe a couple of mates, and you start a study group, which again might work for others. But again, there's a hidden tax to this. So you might start the group and you might be really excited to have the accountability buddies, and then some members disappear. Right, they're not checking in.
No, people don't disappear at first.
No.
At first, everyone's keen.
Yeah, everyone's excited.
Like, a couple of weeks. That's not the way it usually works. Some people are excited. That's my experience anyway. Yeah. When you first put a study together.
Maybe it's just me when people are in a group with me, they're not as excited. Maybe that was my experience of GAMSAT.
My experience is different, right? Like when you put a group together, then everyone's excited at first, but then you start sharing things. And really what it is the blind leading the blind, because they've never successfully done it before, because otherwise they wouldn't be studying with you. You then start to listen to people that don't really know what they're doing. You start to spend hours online searching for resources, starting to study, still unsure if kind of what you're doing is
and
right.
If the resources are helpful and if they're going to be good.
Yeah, hoping that free stuff online is helpful. And then what that starts to do, all of that researching and meeting and talking and all of that stuff, it's not study. It's actually eating into your study time. That is more the researching start and the planning time. And so what was meant to be study time then becomes not studying time because you're trying to figure out what to do. What also tends to happen is that there's some conflicting advice. So, you know, you might look at something online, then you look at something else and it's like totally different. You're like, well, which one's right? And so you ask your pal, but your pal doesn't really know because they haven't said it successfully before, right? So, and you start to look at people who are maybe not the right people, maybe there's some vibe shifts or they say something that upsets you, or not. You say something that upsets them and you don't even know why. And what I love about this is that people often confuse accountability for body doubling. I'm going to explain what the two of those are. So body doubling, it's like an ADHD term because we have had heaps of ADHD students who we've worked with before. And in fact, we found body doubling who've got it in for sure, but we found body doubling is really helpful for them. So it's like when someone else starts their study and starts to do the same thing at the same time, it can help someone with ADHD get started on that task, whereby sometimes there's some resistance on getting started. And I don't know if anyone at home has felt that before, but we've definitely had students where body doubling works. But accountability is very different, because accountability only works when the person that's holding you accountable wants the outcome for you. So if you're studying with someone else and they want to get in, of course they want you to get in, but if you don't get in, it doesn't really affect their life, doesn't affect their career, they're more likely to want you to like them, so they're not going to hold you accountable. They're going to do body doubling maybe, but they're not going to say, hey, Jenny, you didn't turn up. You're an hour late and you're studying the wrong thing. You're going to be effed when it comes to exam time. They're not going to tell you the cold, hard truth. They're just going to get on and do their thing, because their number one priority is them getting in.
And even if they did, they wouldn't know what's actually going to help them, unfortunately, because they haven't done it before.
And so this is where, like, you know, maybe having an accountability group, it's more like a body doubling group, but maybe that accountability group would be helpful to get you started. But you got to think about what's the hidden tax here. Like, what are you really paying for here? And it's not money. Like, you're not joining a study like accountability group or studying someone to pay them. The hidden tax is time, energy, focus, all the things that you need to be building, not subtracting.
Yeah. And then you might end up, canning the group and going on your own. And then you just, looking at what people are saying online, and you feel overwhelmed and intimidated, and procrastination creeps in, and you're avoiding the study. And, and look, that might be the case for a lot of people, but not for everyone. But that's kind of what we found from people trying to do the DIY in terms of kind of from the accountability point of view.
Yeah, it's less accountability and it's more body doubling. But then you have to have if you're going to do the body doubling, you have to have a good study plan, and you have to be really content knowing that your study plan is gonna, one, get you where you want it to go, and two, it's not wasting all the time researching stuff. So if that's what you choose to do, that's my warning. Make sure your plan is in place. You cannot have someone that doesn't know what they're doing helping you with your plan. It just doesn't.
And then
like your trainer, Tom, your deadlift trainer is literally the national record holder in his weight division.
And he's fantastic.
This man, he is like, I don't know, I think his whole body is just one big muscle. He's like the muscliest 50-year-old that I've ever seen.
He's an older fella, but he is in great shape. And he's a great example.
Man knows how to live. Yeah. And he's very similar in terms of, you're not 50, but you're very similar age. You're not going to a trainer that's 20 and done, never done powerlifting and knows how to deadlift, but doesn't know how to get you to your goal. Like, you got to find that appropriate person.
Cool. So then let's talk about kind of the study plan as well, because that could be another thing. I think that's what you're kind of getting at there, Marie's. How do you put together the study plan and what you need to actually cover? What do you actually need to study, and when and how? And so you might end up deciding to do it on your own. And look, this works for some people, not for others. But what we found happens is that you end up downloading a bunch of free stuff online, trying to, figure out what works, what doesn't. And there's so much information there that, you're feeling overwhelmed. You might get a bunch of freebies, and we have a lot of people who come to us. They're saying, "Hey, Marie, I've got all this free stuff, but I don't know what to do with it, or how to start, or how to use it." And so you spend all these hours researching it, wasting valuable study time, not actually making progress. And that you're wondering if you need to buy more books and what you need to do, and you're doubting the process. And look, you might get started, and you might be making some progress. You might be making, getting through the materials, but then you're wondering, have I missed anything?
Tom, can I just say my all-time favorite, when people are building study plan, they're like, I'm just going to start with page 1 of the book and then go to page 400 of the book, and I'm just going to work my way through that. And I'm like, oh my God, that's not going to
Yeah, look,
work because
a lot of
everyone
people
has,
start there, and that's okay to
they do
start there,
start
but
there.
it's not yeah. There are better ways.
It's not efficient because the person that has written that book has their own background. So what you'll find is generally they're kind of got a science background, as an example, just to use the science section. And so what you know about the sciences is going to be different to what they know. And there's a whole bunch of assumptions around how much work you need to put in. Like if you're a nurse, as an example, you might know a bit about biology. So following a textbook that has an equal amount of biology, chemistry, and physics means that some of the time that maybe you should be spending on physics, you're spending on biology about stuff that you don't actually need because you're already familiar with it. And so there's this disproportionate, it just doesn't work well generally for most people. Having a personalized study plan around where your core strengths and weaknesses are is going to give you a way better kind of outcome for the time that you're putting in. Now, if you can study like 40, 50 hours a week and you can do that for a year, then go for your life. Study absolutely everything. Like you got time to spare, then fantastic.
Right? Even then, you pull out some ACE practice questions and you realize that you're still getting most of them wrong, if not all, probably not all of them, but most of them or half of them wrong because you've been studying, or maybe you don't know why. Maybe you've been studying all these different topics and textbooks and you're still getting these questions wrong. You don't know what's going on because you have no one to give you feedback, guidance, whether you're doing the right stuff. And so you keep experimenting. You might go, all right, I'm going to try different methods, and you're constantly second guessing yourself, wondering if you're missing something. And then you hone in on one of the sections because that you enjoy that one more. And it's not as hard as the other ones, and you ignore a section completely. Your time management might be off, and then a lot of people end up just going, you know what, I couldn't be bothered. I've got these other things that are more important, and that's what's called procrastination, saying that other things are important, right? More important than becoming a doctor, and you fall behind and waste a lot of time, and you lose a lot of marks. So there's a hidden tax. Now, look, again, we're not saying that DIY is impossible. Far from it. People have done it and have done well, but there is that price. It's great if you have the time, the resources, the discipline. It can work. It's just you got to be aware of the consequences and the kind of the problems that might arise along the way as well.
Yeah, and you kind of got to think about long-term costs because most people that I come across within the GAMSAT space, they're managing multiple things. You might have kids, you're probably working, you might have a partner that wants to see you every now and again, maybe not. Family commitments, religious commitments, volunteering commitments. Like there's always stuff going on in life, and you just got to decide what is more valuable to you. Is it like investing the time, which you may or may not have, and it taking way longer than it needs to, or is it just getting it done and going in there and having the most focused, laid out plan ready to go? Like that's kind of the decision I feel like needs to be made there.
Yeah, and so that's pathway number one, the DIY. Pathway number two is with a program like our boot camp. And so the value of that is you're having a proven plan for the GAMSAT that's being adapted and applied to you, right? Making sure that you are being efficient with your time and your energy. You're working on the right things at the right time. Even if especially if you're someone who's busy, you're busy enough to try and cram all this in, but having an approach that's been shown to work, that is adapted to you, where you're not wasting time with researching or wondering or trying to find resources, but instead it's all there. It's laid out for you. You have the guidance. And also you have people supporting you or watching over you as well in case you're going down the wrong path and you don't even know it. And sometimes you might know it, but then or maybe you don't know it, right? And having people to check in and say, all right, you've kind of veered off the path. We need to get back onto these different tasks to make sure you're working on the right things. Or on the other hand, if you're having a tough time with life or with GAMSAT or with kind of getting through it all, having someone who's actually going to have a chat with you, guide you through, and also kick your butt when it's necessary, right? Making sure that you're people who aren't afraid to get you back into line. And some people really resonate with that and they really love that. Other people want a more gentle approach. Either way, making sure that you have that with an approach like the boot camp, you have that there for you, guiding you along.
Let me explain what the boot camp is, because there might be people who've never heard of the boot camp and kind of how it works and stuff. So I've been running it for 18 years, so it's massive, but I'm going to try and summarize it as best I can. We always start with students doing what we call strategic analysis. So it's like strengths and weaknesses. We understand the good, the bad, the ugly. We help you to have a personalized plan, so you know exactly what you need to do every step of the way. And then there's 3 ways that we study together. So there's the education library. It's like an online portal with everything that you need in each section. So teaching you the replicatable techniques, worked examples, practice questions, full papers, reasoning skills, everything. The second way that we work together is that we have group classes. They are generally smaller tutorial style classes. They are not big mammoth 400 people lectures. It's more like a family environment where people put their cameras on, we have a chat about things. And I actually like the group classes. I like to call them skills drills, because they're not necessarily lectures. It's actually you doing the work with us rather than us just giving you more homework to do on your own. And then the third way that we study with students are power calls. They are one-on-one get unstuck sessions on Zoom with someone who's got over 70 in that section anytime you need it. Because if you're studying online and you're not in a group environment, I'm telling you, you're going to get stuck at some point. Like, that's normal. I'm sure there's people that are being stuck right now. And so how would it feel to have like someone that you could literally jump on Zoom with for 10 minutes, get unstuck, move on. If you get stuck again, you jump on again, doesn't matter what the issue is. So that's the way we study together. And then we have proper accountability. This is someone who is actually holding you to a higher standard than you're probably going to hold yourself, and making sure that you do the work. Because the plan is done right from the beginning and you send us the plan and we review it, we already know what you're meant to be doing week by week, right? So it's really easy for us to have conversations around when you're hitting your targets, fantastic, having a cheerleader, and when you're not hitting your targets, what needs to change, so that we nip it in the bud. It doesn't become a 1 month, 2 month, 3 month thing where it goes out of hand. It really is a working with you kind of environment.
That's it.
And I think, look, when you started this, I mean, this type of support just wasn't available.
No,
right, Tom?
when I started all of this, it was after I got myself through and I saw how I had done it wrong and how everybody else was doing it wrong in inverted commas. They weren't doing it as effectively and as well as it could be done. And so we started to add different components to it, really looking at what's essential. So nothing in the boot camp is just to throw stuff in there, right? Everything is specifically picked, tweaked, tested, and refined so that it adds and helps you get better results. And so we've done this over, like Mare was saying, over the last 18 years now, and made sure that you have everything that you need in there. And Mare just gave you a summary. There is far more as well along the way that we guide you through and make sure that you are doing the right stuff. Not because we want to have a big and impressive program. No, in fact, we've stripped things away. We keep doing that to make sure that it is as refined and helping you to get the things, the results that you need.
Yeah, I think if we look at like over time, when we first started this, even we didn't realize the importance of accountability, when we first started. And then when we realized, actually, I think we had this light bulb moment. Do you remember, Tom, when we were talking about the cockroaches? There's this study that shows that cockroaches run quicker when other cockroaches are watching, right?
Yeah, and
And I
the
certainly know this.
psychologists in their wisdom said that that must be how humans act.
I mean, come on, that's how I act. Let's face it. I do better Pilates in a class than I do on my own. I can tell you that much.
Yeah.
And I'm sure people feel that way as well. Like, you can look inside. If that doesn't resonate with you, that's cool. But if it does, like, most people are going to do more when there's someone else that they know that's checking and watching and kind of making sure that it's happening. And so when we started to add that element into the boot camp, like, so many of those results went up. It's incredible. Like, the favorite thing for me about the boot camp also is that environment of high performance. Like, everyone else that is there to get the job done. It's not a competitive space. It's like everyone lifts everybody up.
Yeah.
Like, if you're having a bad day and you pop it into our Slack channel, you'll have so much love and support from people. You know, it's really, it's what warms my heart, because it's not just about the GAMSAT. It's about who you become as a person on your way to being a doctor. And that's the type of doctor that you're going to end up being.
And with that being said, accountability is just a small part of the boot camp, because but it is an important component of getting the work done. And obviously we cover sections 1, 2, and 3 with practice questions and techniques and everything that we've covered above or earlier in terms of the key steps. They're in the boot camp, right? That's why we added them in, because they are the key steps. And then we also help you with the application process, deciding which university to apply for, where you're most likely to get an interview. And then we help you with the interviews as well to make sure that you get that offer. Now, at the time of publishing this episode, we're opening up registrations for our next live nurses cohort. And the cohort begins on the 21st of January. Now, this also includes everything you get in the boot camp. But essentially, what is the cohort? Well, it's a group of nurses and healthcare professionals who are going through the GAMSAT journey together. Right? You start in the boot camp at the same time. We get you started with a kickoff call. We have a specific Slack channel for you guys that you're studying together. We have co-studying power hours to make sure that you're supporting each other, and you can leverage that social accountability, but then also all the different resources and strategies and support of the boot camp, so that you're working through it together as a group, but also making sure that you're individually getting it done, because that's the key here, making sure that as individuals you're getting it all done. And that's kicking off on the 21st of January. So if you're listening to this before then and you want to join or find out more, then go to our show notes, which is thankflipgamsat.com/episode 4. And that's 4 with the number 4. And if you're watching this after the 21st, head on over to that link anyway, because we can talk about what else is happening in the boot camp, when you can join, and we can address that with you there as well.
Tom, with that nurses cohort, does that include the nurse-inspired bridging course as well?
Yes. Yes.
So everything that we have. So that includes section 1, section 2, section 3, all of the science content and the reasoning skills. Good. I just wanted to make sure that was in there.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah. So for those who don't know, we have a nurse-inspired science, GAMSAT science bridging course. Because some of our nurses come to us and they're like, what's organic chemistry? Or what do the symbols mean? Right? So we take you from there to a place where you can actually do the GAMSAT questions. And, you know, we make fast progress, and we do a lot of work, but it's very specific to the GAMSAT. Because if you go to a uni general science bridging course, you'll pay $1,500 for a chemistry one, and it won't even be GAMSAT specific. And then you need to do the physics one and the maths one, and then you're $4,500 in, and you've only learned a bit of stuff you can learn from a textbook, and it doesn't apply to the GAMSAT. So we thought, that's crap. Let's create one that's actually applicable to the GAMSAT, that has the things that you need, nothing you don't. And that's what we have in there as well. So like I said, there's a whole bunch in there that's very much been specifically chosen and crafted and tested and refined. And if you want to find out more, head to that link, thankflipgamsat.com/episode 4. But look, ultimately, how you proceed is your decision, right? There's no right or wrong here. It depends on you, what works best for you. You might go the DIY route and take on that hidden GAMSAT tax, and that might be okay for you. Or you might join the boot camp and skip ahead some of the parts to the more important bits and skip some of the bits that don't really matter. And we're here to offer the guidance and the resources that have already helped so many nurses and healthcare professionals succeed.
Yeah, we want you to succeed. I mean, we really want to make this as easy as possible for you. And that's why we've laid things out kind of step by step, so you don't have to figure it out. Like, I wish someone had told Tom about what the hidden tax was, with him swearing in Polish in that Redfern property, trying to get that vanity out of the bathroom and almost flooding their place.
And almost breaking the new one as well. God, yeah. The one that I paid hundreds of dollars for, yeah.
Yeah, like, I mean, we really want you to go in and go, I'm making a decision for myself, whether it's the DIY route, which is great, or whether it's with us, which is also great. I mean, the most important thing is that you are setting yourself up for success without any of that guesswork. So I really hope that today has been helpful. And that, let us know either way. Like, I'm very excited to hear about people's journeys.
Yeah, and so this brings the January Jumpstart to an end. This is the final episode, the final part. And the last step is to look at that link about the nurses cohort. We will have more episodes of the podcast coming up after this. So make sure you subscribe to this however you're listening to it. We have more goodies coming for you. We've got interviews with successful medical students who've gone through the GAMSAT, who are nurses and physios and OTs, and how they did it. And we're going to dive deeper into the different sections and talk about GPAs and all sorts of cool things. So make sure you stick around. But that's it for today. Thanks, Mare, for being awesome. And I'll see you in the other. You're just in the other room, so I'll.
You'll see me later. You probably won't see all the listeners.
No, we won't see the listeners.
Maybe though, you never know.
Cool.
Yeah, this has been really fun. The January Jumpstart's been really fun, but it's certainly not over. We have much more to come with the podcast.
Excellent. All right, well, that's it. Have a good day, and I'll see you guys next time.
Bye. Hey, I have a cool gift for you, just for listening to the Nurses Doing GAMSAT podcast. We do some of our best work in our Facebook group called, you guessed it, Nurses Doing GAMSAT. It's free to join, and every day we're sharing actionable guides, tips and tricks, and really just how to smash the exam and get into medicine. You can join today by searching Nurses Doing GAMSAT on Facebook. Thanks for listening to another episode, and I'll see you next time.